A pleasure to meet y'all at last, and welcome back to some more Nerf Secrets Revealed Aftersought Part 2. I'm proud to say that after years and years and years of innovation, we've seen a lot of spectacular blasters that have been released. And here in the 2020s, I do feel like that while Nerf may be the subject of a lot of controversy and a lot of unwanted criticism, that certainly does show that a lot of people out there really don't care about a highly successful toy brand like Nerf. I'm rather concerned. At the same time that Nerf has been pretty much dominating the world with their ingenious products and usage of mechanical systems that operate in flinging foam to the furthest distances possible, it's time that we talk a little bit about one of the lowest that I might have ever had to discuss. I can't really be sure exactly why they thought this was a good idea, especially at a more recent point where they've had to learn from their mistakes, they've had to overcome a lot of trial and error, and they've also had to climb a ladder all the way to the top. The top, of course, that represents the things like success, fame, fortune, and a lot of admiration. This is in fact the Zombie Strike Revreaper, a manually operated flywheel blaster. This was a concept that had in fact been done way back in the day, especially in the early to mid 2000s. If you're familiar with the green balls that they used to use in blasters, like the Reactor and Buzzsaw, these were blasters that actually had manually operating systems. The Reactor worked by simply building air pressure with the pump inside of a few tube chambers and a large spring, not to mention a big rubber flap that would allow for a lot of pressure to be created and allow the ball to pop out, whereas the Buzzsaw was a bit different. It had a large track that you'd be able to pull back and push forward repeatedly to allow a flywheel to fly around, which will allow balls to shoot out. But this one, of course, is in fact of similar functionality, because all you have to do with this one is simply pull back, push forward this grip. So of course, let's just go ahead and simply put this thing to the test. Yeah. What more could you ask for, pretty much? Well, in all honesty, I don't really feel like this actually would be decent. Because there's pretty much a few things that are wrong with this blaster entirely. Because for one, this is an 18 dart clip that I'm using for the record. And so, if you take a look at it, it wobbles and shakes around, which could simply mean that this is a little too loose by anybody's standards. And who would ever like to see their own clips rocking around, which could lead to some problems over time? And of course, it does release nicely, and even when it is in fact in there, it may look like it's shaking, like it's gonna fall out, but it's very well secure. But the whole point of it is, why would you allow a clip to sway around or swing in the first place? The second thing, of course, is probably the most obvious part of this whole entire thing when talking about the cons about this blaster entirely. The sound. And now the clip is pretty much empty, but if you haven't guessed already, yes, the sound. I mean, like, who thought that that was a good idea? Who thought it would be a good idea to use probably the most obnoxious kind of sound that could ever be possible through a series of pieces of plastic, just like that? Yet, at the same time, I'm not really feeling a lot of bad bias around here, because there's probably a lot of people out there who have had similar experiences with loud noises generated by Nerf blasters. If you've used the Mega Centurion, the first of its own kind, in 2013, as I have, then you pretty much know that loud noises are also apparent within that blaster itself. So the Revreaper is definitely not alone when it comes to having blasters out there that are able to make loud noises and therefore possibly be obnoxious over continuous usage. But the whole point is, why put that into the blasters to begin with? Why put any of this kind of stuff into the blaster to begin with? So otherwise, there's not really much else I could possibly say. Although, I do have a spare 18-dart clip that is in fact loaded with invisibullets. So, let's just see if this can actually help improve the blaster's overall functionality, and we'll also see other things happen with it some other time. But now, time for the test. Wow. With that, I just flew through a second 18-dart clip, and 36 darts in total, across the board. And I'm not lying when I say that that actually was rather satisfying to see. I mean, to actually be able to operate manually operated flywheel blasters like this, at least for one last time, does seem to be quite a bit of a fair trade, if you ask me. But am I asking anybody to go out there and buy this thing? Certainly not. I was able to get this thing on the cheap just so I can actually talk a bit more about this, and also use this in favor of a lot of other blasters out there that I certainly did like a little bit more. Because if you really want to become a true Nerfer out there, then you certainly do have to dive into the deepest bottom of the barrel itself. As deep as the bottom could possibly go. So, I'm more than glad that at least I've got this one taken care of here and on Distance Gauge Part 2, in case you haven't checked it out already. But soon enough, this will have to have a full-on review that I will in fact have nothing to hold back on. And so, if you want to see more go down on my channel, then make sure that you like, subscribe, comment, follow me on social media, and stay on the Hollywood side.